Good evening. Good evening to the people here in this audience, in this room, and to those who are connected from elsewhere. It's not by chance that there are so many people here today. We are here to listen to His Excellency Msgr Pizzaballa, a friend of us, whom we've already had the honor to meet over the past years. This year, we have invited him to make an in-depth analysis of the topic of the title of this meeting. All that you have, bequeathed you by your father, earn it in order to possess it. I think that many people here in this room are excited, and that shows the interest that we all have in listening to what Father Pizzaballa will tell us. And so let's give him a very, very warm round of applause before starting.
E lo ringraziamo.
We thank him for accepting our invitation, which is not taken for granted for us, and it's not even taken for granted for himself. So I'll just make a couple of remarks in order to introduce his speech. Over the first few days of the meeting, we have already discussed many topics where we've been discussing the title of the meeting, and we've tried to explain it. So what we Italians and Europeans have been bequeathed by our fathers. We've talked about what is this momentous change, what are the technological challenges of today, what is the truth of the walls beyond and within which we're now living. All these topics compel us to ask ourselves who we are. We've heard many people that think about the meeting with Father Lepori, with Professor Abukawa and the monks of Mount Koya, or the words of Father Patton on the Holy Land. Now it's Tuesday, the third day of the meeting, and now we have to make an in-depth analysis of the title of the meeting. So we're going to discuss the title of the meeting, we'll make an in-depth analysis, and we'll focus on its contents. We've heard a few words over these days: tradition, heritage, fathers, youth. All these words are different factors of the experience that we all have to repossess, and they're all connected to the life of each one of us. Through our experience in this meeting, I think that we are increasingly realizing that we don't want to be old people adulating the past, nor young people with no memory. And these words have been repeated over and over again these days. At a time of crisis like this one, we need to talk about heritage. Now, this is the first important remark. Then there's a second remark, which is equally important and concerns Msgr Pizzaballa. It's very important for us that he is the one speaking about this topic. Msgr Pizzaballa comes from the Holy Land, which is the land of heritage. It is the cradle of the three monotheistic religions. It is the place where we can really understand that heritage is not connected to archaeology or the past, but it's a problem of transmission of life. Our problem is not like restoring the Holy Sepulchre, but wondering what is the Holy Sepulchre for us today. So it is meaningful for us that he is the one speaking about this topic today. I'll just give you some explanations of who Father Pizzaballa is. He is a Franciscan friar. He likes to define himself this way. He has been living in Jerusalem since 1990. Just a few days after he became a priest, well, literally 3 weeks later, 3 weeks after I was ordered as a priest. Before he was a scholar and collaborator of the Catholic Church, and from 2004 to 2016, he was a custodian of the Holy Land. In 2016, responsibility for custody was passed on to Father Patton, and Pizzaballa, came back to Italy. Well, no, not really. I didn't come back, not even for a month, but Pope Francis asked him not to leave Jerusalem. So he ordered him as a bishop, the Pope ordered him as a bishop, and he was appointed as Apostolic Administrator of the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem. As in, Father Pizzaballa is now directly administering a big Catholic diocese comprising Jerusalem, and not only, also 65 parishes scattered around the territory of Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Cyprus. And the cathedral of his parish and his diocese is the Holy Sepulchre Basilica. And I'm gonna give him the floor now. Well, I'm not really feeling at my ease now, so stop with your applause. Thank you. I see many people here. Thank God for all that. I hope I'll be able to say something useful for each one of you. As I told the organizers who were kind enough to invite me here and who insisted for having me here, I'm not a theologian, nor I'm an expert in sociological or political issues. I'm not going to talk about politics, but I'm going to stick to the topic. And I'm going to give my own personal perspective. So I will be simple enough, and I will give you my interpretation of this topic. As many of you, I have more questions than answers on this topic. There are many questions that I cannot answer fully, or to analyze or to define. And just like many of you, I cannot really interpret all the different remarks and all the different doubts and questions raised by this topic. So the title of this meeting raises some of the questions of our time, where we as Christian believers have to think about. We are in the time of the post-truth, the liquid thought, everything right now. A period where we only want to live in the present, where projects are short-term, where forever does not exist, where we have to be parents of ourselves. It is a time where we're lost in details in all the contexts of our life. So, as we said, we're lost in details in all aspects, in all contexts of our life. There's no room for God in that. And we know that where God is absent, the idea of man and the world totally changes. Even in the church, I think there's a similar phenomena. And I feel even more questioned now that I'm a shepherd of a church. In the Western world, we are in the post-Christian period. This is the definition that we're given today. Not even anti-Christian, but post-Christian. The Christian thought that for centuries and generations has accompanies us in a way or another is no longer underlying the common thought. I'm not talking about the scientific or academic or cultural sector. This is what was said by Paul VI in his encyclical, The Split Between the Gospel and Culture is without a doubt the drama of our time. And even in social life, there's this radical change, momentous change. Short, faith has no longer been transmitted in families. And then all the rest came by. The Western Christianity, which for centuries was underlying the church, at least the Catholic Church, today is no longer crucial. We are at a time of momentous change where society, culture, religion, humanism are no longer read and lived according to the standards we used to have. Both in Europe and the Middle East, we live similar phenomena. In the Middle East, everything is changing. In the Middle East, it was especially the conflicts that destroying the social, cultural, and religious fabric and to sweep away the continuity of transmission of faith. The old coexistence of different people that were different, that was already weakened in the 20th century by Arabian dictatorships, is now no longer existing. Now everything has to be rebuilt from scratch, but we don't know the criteria to use. The sense of belonging to a religious community and a community is no longer enough to support Christian communities, which are fading away, little by little. As you can understand from these very superficial remarks, today's scenario is extremely complex, and therefore it is difficult to think about it and to summarize it. And this is the mistake. The mistake is providing one single definition of the complexity of our time. Some have tried to do so. Vattimo talked about the weak thought. Bauman talked about the liquid society. But these expressions are not enough in order to interpret complexity. So maybe we need to accept very humbly that we don't yet have the key in order to understand all these phenomena, and we need to learn and live inside this complexity with our own Christian style. We cannot solve the problems, but we can live the problem as Christians. So we need to live to understand this new social model rather than wondering what we should do against it. Christ is the truth, is life, and is still waiting for a language that can make him become the life, the truth, and the life. So the question for us believers is the following. As believers, how do we have to think our relation with what we call tradition? What we have received from our fathers in faith is but the truth of man and its history. In any case, these contents seem no longer have to have anything to say to the contemporary man. Contemporary man who is not even interested to listen. So sometimes man is not interested in God's rescue. Man no longer wants to be rescued by somebody else. And I often hear that. Maybe we need to identify a new form of proposal or a new language or not, because the language that has always been used is still working. This is rhetoric. It is urgent to repropose a new language, maybe not in a new way, So we have to repropose in a new language what we have inherited and we've been bequeathed by our fathers. It's not only language update, which is urgent. If we are aware of what we have received, then we can express it. Heritage, in order to possess it, in order to be invested, must first of all be understood, received, and welcome. Truth can also be refused. You can refuse truth even today from a legal point of view. And this task should always be renewed. I do not welcome what I don't feel mine. In other words, what you have been bequeathed must necessarily be invested, because over the time, heritage, which is not invested, is depleted. We always need to repossess what you have received in order to be real heirs. Goethe's sentence, which is the title of the meeting, shows a style of the spirit, which is an ongoing task. It is not a formula. It is not a formula to live in our times, but it is a style of spirit. It is an attitude. Now, after this very long introduction, maybe too long, let's provide a biblical perspective. It is important to start with the biblical foundations. So heritage, fathers, earning, possessing. The Bible is full of these words, from the book of Genesis to the Apocalypses. But there is a word which runs the risk of being neglected and forgotten. What you have bequeathed you by your father, what you have bequeathed by your father, earn it. So first of all, you have to become an adult, a person. The children cannot inherit, cannot be bequeathed. So first of all, we need to become adults. So we need to become people, we need to become adults, and the person is at the crossroads of earning, possessing, heritage, and fathers. Otherwise, everything is abstract. You can become a people only through acknowledgement, appropriation of your history, understanding of your history, everything that has been given to you. You cannot be born as a person. You become a person. So the first thing to do in order to inherit is to become adult. So, heritage. This is the Old Testament. In the biblical language, in the Bible language, heritage is the earth. It is one of the most ancient names that Israel gives to the little earth where it lives. In Hebrew, heritage is nachalah. It is some sort of concept of stability. So the good cannot be given away. It has to stay in the family. So earth belongs to God. God is giving earth to Israel, but it's still owned by God. So every 50 years, people buying the land have to give it back. And this good is stable, and it cannot be lost. In the end, heritage is a mutual gift. God's heritage is Israel. Israel is God's heritage, but Israel's heritage is God itself. I haven't got much time to explain that, but in order to be faithful, in order to earn its heritage, God needs to be faithful and loyal to Israel. How to do that? By forgiving Israel, because Israel always creates a lot of problems. So he can forgive, God forgives Israel, and he repossesses Israel by forgiving it. Otherwise, he would have lost it forever. And to Israel, it means being faithful to the alliance which is always under the mercy of God. So heritage talks about a concept of link, mutual belonging, being a mutual gift. This concept is very close to the idea itself of life, where life is understood in its deepest meanings. And then heritage is connected to the concept of memory. Heritage must be remembered. You have to remember that what you have has been given as a gift. And chapter 12 of the Exodus, you're Catholic, so you should know the Bible, but let's pretend you don't. This is the chapter talking about the Exodus from Egypt. Well, you know the story. You know that you need to eat, you need to do it fast. There's a whole description about that. So people have to flee as against the Pharaoh's opinion, and rather than say, okay, defend yourselves from the Pharaoh, but rather than doing that, you have to remember what you are given, so you have to eat. So today, the Jewish Easter is the memory of this Exodus. And here there is God's concern. You not only need to remember, but you need to remember well. You need to remember well what God has done, because a polluted memory is worse than forgetting. If you remember bad, if you don't really remember what you have received, well, this is even worse. And then there's the Deuteronomy and many other books talking about that. So the concept is, if you forget about the heritage that you have received, you're going to lose this heritage. But if you possess it and you deny that you've been given it as a gift, then you're going to lose it. And then there's the concept of earning and possessing. This is still connected to the Bible and the Old Testament. This heritage expresses our desire. I'm going to talk about two parables. The parable of talents. You know that, don't you? Yes, you do.
Ecco, la conosciamo tutti.
We all know the parable of the talents. A man leaves for a journey and gives away the talents, 5, 3, and 1. We're not all the same. The first two are investing the money, are using the money. They invest the money. Investing is a risk. And they put at risk everything. So they invested everything. They invested all of them. So they bet everything on that heritage. That was the man of 5 that was given 5 talents. The same applied to the man that was given 2 talents. The last man keeps the talent because he's afraid. Because he's afraid. So he should have used the money, but this man says, "This is what is yours," he says to his master. And he gives back the only talent he was given. He could not understand that that talent, which is owned by the master, was given to him because it could become his heritage. The master had given the talent to him so that he could use it, and he didn't understand that. So he didn't put himself at stake. So I've given many remarks which are self-evident. Then there's the parable of the hidden treasure and the pearl, 2 very short parables that we heard a few Sundays ago. So they find the hidden treasure, they go and sell everything. The same applies to the pearl. So they sell everything, and I'm underlining the concept of everything. The treasure is worth all of their life, is worth all of them. So this heritage, the Nachala, talks about the land, the earth, and this is God himself. It's the alliance with God. God asks his people to remember that this land has been given as a heritage, and that men have to be aware that this gift enables Israel to become itself, to become you. Israel becomes an adult this way because he understands that he was given this heritage by God. It's like if God said, if you remember what I have done and how I've created you, what I've given to you is yours. But if you forget about our alliance, then you're going to lose the heritage. Then there's a further step on forward. So the first two men of the parable of the talents invest everything, all the talents received, the heritage, and they decide to put themselves at stake without fear of losing everything. And the one who failed was the one that left the heritage as it was without using it, without investing it. So what does that suggest? What does the Bible suggest to us believers who are a bit confused today reading the title of the meeting? I'm a bit bewildered, I'm a bit confused. Let's try to understand. Let's try to understand after this biblical perspective. So this heritage is not mine, I have received it, so it is a gift. It is not mine. So this is the first remark. It is a gift given by God, which I have received by my fathers, but it is a gift. And talents must be invested. And in order to do that, I have to put myself at stake. I have to put everything at stake. All my life must be put at stake. And this is the only way that I can possess this heritage, that this heritage can become mine, my heritage. So I'm going to give you my personal perspective now on the title of the meeting. I'm a friar. I also have some identity problems, so I don't really know who I am now, in any case.
Allora, questa eredità
So this heritage is God, our link with him. Everything coming out from this identity, the idea of man, a world, culture, everything created by man. This is the heritage. Therefore, we need to wonder what we remember about this heritage, if we welcome it, how we welcome it, or if we refuse it. Today, we have a complex relation with history, tradition, memory. We also like talking about tradition. Sometimes we don't like it because it is old-fashioned. Rather, we tend to refuse what we have received from our fathers because it is a heavy burden, it is outdated in the name of modernity. Or we refuse many aspects of modernity, going back to the idea of tradition, values, and memory. We float between these two concepts. Whereas we need to recover a good relation with memory. As adults, we need to have an adult relationship with memory. Otherwise, we will be like children. When you're a child, you do what your parents want you to do. When you are adult, then you can translate into your own experience what your parents have given to you. There's a refusal. But then you go beyond that. So like the Bible says, without memory, there's no identity. And therefore, there's no consistency. Welcoming the heritage of our fathers means renewing memory. It's nothing to do with nostalgia. It means recovering a journey that can make us go away. They can get us far. It means thinking and remembering about a promise that came before us, that was received and transmitted by our fathers. We are children, we're not orphans. Orphans find it difficult to rebuild their identity. Children do not. Children know that they are children of their parents and of their grandparents. We are children, we're not orphans. And the society that wants to live in the present is an orphan society. But it's a nightmare to be parents of ourselves. There is a chapter in the Bible, which I like, which I found by chance. It's John 7:6. When during a festival, they asked Jesus to go to Jerusalem and to open himself to the world. And Jesus answers back in a very cunning way, "My time has not come yet. Yours is always ready." Therefore, Jesus knows that it is not yet time for him to express himself, to reveal himself. And he says, "The time always ready is a time without kairos." It's like today, where everything is flat, where everything is okay, and the opposite of everything is still okay. So this memory is not a repetition of things. We do not have to answer with a creativity without loyalty. We don't have to repeat what has been done as parrots, but we don't need to create as if nothing had been created before us. What is important in heritage, and this is a very important remark, is the transmission of desire from one generation to the other. This is important. Having memory, remembering, not just out of nostalgia, but to awaken desire. The desire is the way our fathers lived on this land and gave meaning to their existence. Desire is the way with which our fathers gave witness of their desire. That you can live with impetus, a satisfaction, giving a meaning to our presence in the world. So they were able to provide meaning to their existence in the world. They did wonderful things which today we have inherited. We don't have to do what they have done, but their desire must be our own desire. So what we must learn from our fathers is not what they have done, but the reason why they've done that. Today, we must do different things, but the desire, the passion must be the same.
Allora bisognerebbe chiedersi se il nostro...
So we should ask ourselves, our relying in memory, is that more about nostalgia and like thinking about the past, or is about going back to the desire that animated our fathers and could animate today us as well, making us protagonists of the building of our own reality and not just the guardians. So I need to understand how to reinvest this legacy as a Franciscan. But what I was bequeathed needs to be managed somehow. Can I make that legacy my own? This is the things that I have to think over. And usually the believer is really trying to think about how to build somehow a new kingdom. And it's not that you feel lost, because you belong to the kingdom with a capital K. And it's a fact. You can't feel indifferent. You can't just be passive. You can't be neutral or ataxic. And you are not scared. I just to give you an example, a member of CL, and he reminded me of Saint Benedict from Norcia. He had come to Rome on the 6th century, and he was expecting a triumphant Rome, a beautiful, an incredible place, and he was full of expectation, but instead he found a decadence, corruption, so the decline of an empire. And Saint Benedict, what did he do? He retired. He was a monk and he attracted other people, and then he created the Benedictine order, and he saved our civilization. He was our savior somehow, the savior of our civilization, because he simply did not limit himself to keep going. No, he knew, he understood that things needed to be done differently. So if we had the wonderful Greek and Roman bequeath, it's thanks to the Benedictines, to what they did, because they really saved such an important legacy that risked to be lost forever, but instead they preserved it. And the experience of those monks could see in that the infinite desire for beauty, for love, and only the encounter with a witness can somehow rekindle that desire that is in everybody of us deep down. But sometimes we're not aware of that. We're not conscious of that. We need to rediscover that. And Benedict did so, and many others. But let's make a step further. So trying to earn something in order to possess it. Well, that means trying to make something your own, make a legacy your own. That means also becoming adult and growing up. So the adult individual is able to do so. These growing up process that entails the making legacy your own is like a miracle. It's like a talent that you make thrive and grow, and this is something you go through every day of your life. So it's not about wasting time waiting for the big occasion, the big opportunity. I mean, it's not about landmarking events, and it's not about the entity of the event, but it's about the quality of the events and doing something on a regular basis, knowing that you are going to decide your own fate, your own destiny, every day, every second of your life. And the parable of the talents somehow refers to the fear we're all animated with. We're all scared about losing something, to lose dignity, to lose a job, to lose life, but also to lose our bearings, our points of reference from a cultural and religious point of view. We are afraid of feeling lost, cast away, to feel absolutely alone in a sort of deserted present. Maybe we think that nothing can help us or save us. And we also need to consider and that a legacy is not made of good ethics, a perspective of perfection, or sublime values. That would be part of a human nature that could be fulfilled without God. But this is not the case. Our salvation is Easter, is the new life. This is what we are thirsty of. And then you can get joy. When you experience salvation, you get to the joy, like the person who found a treasure. And so the joy is the sign. Our communities should express these legacies through joy, the value of these legacies through joy. And St. Paul tells us in the letter to the Philippians, in a chapter, what was a gain to me, I consider that as a loss. I consider that everything is a loss, but to the favor of knowing God. So I put everything away because I want to gain Christ and find myself in Him. So, believer, if you experienced the Easter and the salvation, if you went through redemption, if you went through salvation, if you experienced a new life, so you won't be scared by losing this world where everything changes rapidly and where everything seems to be lost forever. Well, then, now more than ever, it's about being in this world full of joy. We're not scared about ideologies and fashions and trends, and this is the same witness as Benedict gave us. And how to stay on this border, how to go through this border. So how is it so that what was lost can be found, what was old becomes new, how all that fits into the kingdom? There's a risk. And the risk is, the thing is that, well, there's no difference. So there is waste, there is rubbish, and there is sublime. So not all things are the same. There is a border. And so we may think that there are no more borders today, no more frontiers, that we should get all together. Well, borders will always exist. It's a fact. Frontiers will always exist. And we need to say in our case that believers and the church are carriers of a novelty, of something unique. And our style has to express this uniqueness. Our attitude needs to express that. It is important to understand that, to realize that, because if there is a pearl that is hidden, you have to find it. You need to remember. You need to remember well. To remember well what gave you salvation. It's not about simply bequeathing a legacy or coming up with something new, but simply being very, very attentive and seizing the emotional sense and the desire to animate our fathers. And then our goal is to make things even more understandable to men of present times. And, well, I've been visiting the Middle East over the last few years. We're not in a hurry, so take your time. Let's move to the Middle East. Over the last few years, as many of you, maybe with a closer standpoint, I saw with my own eyes the tragedy that happened in the Middle East. And in particular, being in charge of a church, I asked myself over the last year, and I ask myself almost every day, what is left of what happened, of our past, of our old church tradition that was so rich. Well, there's a great tradition in the Middle East of our church, and we are at the end of an era. I won't get into the details because this is not the main topic of our event, but certainly everything seems to be over, and the Christian population is almost displaced, church is destroyed, families destroyed. So it's really a tragedy, and there are really, 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 really few people who stayed. And even if the war seems to be over, still it's a challenge to persuade the refugee population in Jordan, Lebanon, and so on, to go back. They are afraid. They're afraid of uncertainties, of gloomy perspectives, of a life to be reconstructed, of a life that will be even more difficult and uncertain and never like before. Who's going to govern? What's going to happen? Is there going to be enough employment for everybody, enough labor for everybody? Is there going to be another crisis? Well, there are incredible good initiatives in Aleppo and in other places with the Salesians and others. And please do not misunderstand me. Those things are very important, but it cannot fix such a serious and complex situation. And some time ago, I met in Amman 100 children from Iraq, and all Christians, and they were there to study in the morning. They used to be there, In the morning, teaching was done to the Jordans, and in the afternoon to the children from Iraq. And so I asked what kind of syllabus they were used to follow. And they said, oh, we are using English because we're going to leave. I was struck because I was asking about the language used for such learning sessions, and that struck me. And also when I talked to some people of the clergy, I noticed some sort of discouragement. And well, now things are slightly better, but certainly things are very worrying. There's big concern. And so also people are a bit closed, they have mistrusted, they are very afraid. So fortunately, I was able to establish relations and to have the opportunity to talk to people. So even things are changing, but everything seems to be against the connection with this legacy. There seems to be an uprooting process, and that tradition that we contributed to construct and build and consolidate seems to be disappearing. So how to be part of this situation without becoming the servant who got the talent and gave it back, or decided to hide it. So now I'm asking myself what to do to these people, which kind of guidelines to provide in order to get out of this catch-22 mentality. It's not enough to build houses, to provide jobs. So this is not enough. You also need to provide people with guidelines and sort of guiding words. And it's not about coming up with theories and abstract words and talking about big theories about the Middle East. Now I want to transfer and convey hope to these people. I want to do something pragmatic. And a young Palestinian boy helped me. I met him a few weeks ago. He had just come back from his studies, and he shared some remarks and reflections with me. And he told me, well, I've been here for almost 40 years. And he asked me, well, now you're a bishop, so please do not connect our destiny and our presence here to social context or political perspective. All that is important, certainly. This needs to be kept in mind because we believe we belong to this world, but certainly this won't save Christendom here. Our faith will save us, our attachment to our faith and to Jesus, the deep motivation of being Christian. This is what is going to save us here, because unless you are deeply motivated to be Christian, so humanly will be able to keep you there. I mean, you need something stronger, something going beyond, something bigger, something greater. If you don't give us something great, we will go away, we will leave, we will quit. So tying up our hopes to political expectations certainly leads to frustration. And those words struck me deeply. And we need to then start from a specific element. This is one of my own reflections, and I tell it myself first and foremost, and then to my community. We need to try to go back what makes us new and diverse, and use that to create a community of believers who rely all together on a shared faith and draw on that in order to put themselves at stake. This is a desire I mentioned at the beginning, and this is not about regrets, but this is about hope. So that's what feeds all this. You have something big inside and you want to fulfill it. You want to empower yourself through that. And life is made of encounters, but today we need, of course, to go through a personal process, but we need to do it within a community perspective, because if our community is not able to express some form of sort of great commonly shared goal, we will maybe fragment ourselves and feel dispersed and scattered. We need to repossess this greatness and uniqueness that is in us. So I think that we need to go back to that legacy, to that passion that animated the construction of cathedrals. Our fathers built cathedrals, everything we see today. So we have to go back to that, to regain it and repossess it. So that we will do different things in the future, not build other cathedrals. We still have to understand what we're going to do in the future, and maybe these things that we're going to do will be different here or in the Middle East, but we certainly need to do something different, but deeply marked by the Christian attitude that doesn't want to sort of dominate on the world, not at all. And in particular, we want to announce, to offer a proposal, to suggest something, and that can and should be declined in several cultural, social, economic aspects, and this is the Christian message. So God turned into a man in order to remain human, and acknowledging His glory everywhere in our daily lives is our goal. So trying to enlighten and cast light on all the aspects of life, contaminating them with our hope. But if you just remain stuck in the past, there's no hope. But if there is hope in you, you need to look back to see what your fathers bequeathed you, but then again, earn it in order to repossess it. And there's another extract of the Gospel, and it's always Paul VI. And there is just a quote, a very meaningful one from John, Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene, we always need a key woman. So I saw the Lord after resurrection, and Mary Magdalene went to the disciples and said, I saw the Lord, and what he said. So she says, I saw the Lord. So again, this is another way to talk about legacy, and again refers to the evangelization process. So I'm not talking about what you may think of. So it's not about proselytism, not at all. It's about having a beautiful message and conveying to the world. And so being aware of the beauty of this message, of the joy. There is so much of beautiful and good in the gospel, and so great legacy. And only silly people can exchange that for fundamentalism on integralism. So, because sometimes people are using some sort of legacy arguments as marketing strategies, but this is not about feeling sort of attractive and appealing. No, it's about conveying a great message. This is different through our announcement, and we need to do that with our attitude. Our standard is open, it is hospitable, there is welcoming, but it is not indifferent. So this is a privileged and pragmatic form with which the Church gives its best treasure to future generations, the pearl. But to gain it, you need really to go through that. And I invite you to read briefly two parts of the Evangelii Nuntiandi encyclical of Paul VI, so 21 and 22. And he writes in beautiful Italian. I would like to write like that. So a group of Christians, well, he says, a group of Christians within the community of men where they live. So within the community they live in, express welcoming and opening abilities, sharing their destiny, trying to make the most in order to promote what is good. And so they represent the faith in values that go beyond the current values. This is the hope in something that cannot be seen, that you cannot even dare imagine. Well then, thanks to such testimony, these Christians arise in the hearts of the people who see them live irresistible questions. Why is it so? Why do these people live like that? What's their source of inspiration? And why are these people among us? And this is beautiful, a beautiful text. And then there is another beautiful extract that I read many years ago for a theology exam, and now I read it again for my pleasure. However, this testimony is always insufficient, because even the most beautiful words won't be effective if it's not justified and corroborated. What Peter calls the fact of justifying and argumenting your own hope. So the good news that is given through the life testimony, sooner or later, needs to be also announced by the word of life. So the Christian has to provide a witness through their lives, and then this life will turn into expression, into words, into culture, into thoughts, into thinking, into reality. So this is about communities building something. And this text was written in the 70s, so please read it again. So it's not about building new walls. There are too many walls. But Paul VI used to say that these people are among us. And we need to understand that our fathers gave their own answers. Now, today, we have to provide our own answers, but with our own desire. We made it our own. So, again, it's about turning everything into love. So, going back to that hidden talent, we want to invest that talent. So, nothing in human experience can't be enlightened by the experience of the gospel. And this is exactly our task, and we are the only one who can do it. We can't delegate to other people. So something new will happen. So what do we have earned and repossessed through these sort of re-experiencing of the gospel will be shared with everybody. This will become a legacy and a gift for everybody. Right, so I want to conclude and say that the Bible, with the Genesis, starts with the garden and ends with a city called Jerusalem. You have to read the Bible. It starts with a garden in the Genesis and ends with the city, Jerusalem. The garden was made by God alone. Jerusalem was not built by God, was built by us together with Him. So God by Himself was never able to build a city by His own. He always needed the help of men. Even the Jerusalem in the Apocalypse, coming from heavens, can't be built without man. The new Jerusalem can't be built just by God without us. That's exactly for that He gives His talents away, to some 3, to some 5, to some 1. And my wish for myself and for you is to make you become the new bricks of the new Jerusalem.
Facile concludere. Facile concludere adesso. Facile. Tutto facile. Beh, hanno fatto bene quelli del meeting a
Well, I think that the organizers of the meeting were bloody right to insist for having you here. It's now very easy for me to draw conclusions because now I really feel that what he told us does have a meaning for us. So this is the reason why we're here these days. This is the reason why we're spending all our energy, all our efforts. Because when you were saying building a new world to which we already belong, I deeply felt that this is what we're called upon to do. This is what we're called upon to do. This is the way that we are called upon to transmit our desire. Desire is transmitted by stirring life, by promoting life, by living together and experience giving the explanations of this world that we belong to. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us. Thank you warmly, because what you told us is helping us to get deeper into this topic and help us live and experience these days. And this is why this year, much more than in the past, we feel deeply responsible for what we are doing, what we are building and developing. And this is why this year, much more often than in the past, that we insist on asking you to help this meeting through your donations. Thank you, because you help us in understanding what we are living and what we belong to. Thank you.
Vi finisco l'avviso.
To end up with the announcement on donations. In all the different pavilions, you can find the desks, Dona Ora, donate now, and donations can only be done to the dedicated desks, where you will be welcomed by volunteers with a green T-shirt. A really warm thank you for all the gift, you gave us in being here, although it was very hard for you to come here. Thank you.